Hi everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make my bobbly baby jumper. This pattern's really easy. It does involve a little bit of sewing, but the overall construction of it is so much more simple this way as opposed to a no-sew pattern that I think it outweighs the sewing that's involved. I've made this jumper in a double knit yarn. Using a 4mm hook and a 3mm hook. Today I'm going to show you how to make the newborn size version of this pattern. My pattern at the moment my written one currently goes all the way up to age 2 to 3. I'm also in the process of writing it up for older children and also in adult sizes too. You can find my written patterns by looking in the description below, and you'll see the link there, and that will link you to my Ravelry store, my Ribbler store or my Etsy store, depending on where you prefer to buy your patterns. This pattern is worked from the bottom up, so we will be starting by making rows of ribbing, and we will be starting with our smaller hook. For me it's a 3mm, and we will then be working the main body, the torso piece. We'll do that twice, so we will have a front piece and a back piece. Then we will be sewing together, and I will show you how I like to sew my garments. And then we will be crocheting each of the sleeves and then finishing off with the neckline there. Okay, so let's begin. I will talk you through our gauge swatch and how to figure out what size hooks you'll need in the next section of the video. Now, because everybody crochets differently, we have different tension, and obviously not all double weight yarn is exactly the same width. Basically, we need to create a gauge swatch quickly just to ensure that you do get the correct sizing at the end of your finished piece. In order to do that, I'd like you to take a 4mm crochet hook and your chosen yarn that you're going to be making this jumper in. I'd like you to then, if you chain 17 and then work 15 half double crochets back into that chain and work another 5 rows of half double crochets, so you'll have 6 rows of 15 half double crochets in total. My personal piece measures 3.25 inches wide by 2 inches tall. Now if yours is coming up at a similar measurement within half a centimetre or so, then carry on and make this piece using a 4mm hook and a 3mm. If your piece is coming up small, up your hook size, so go up by 1/2 mil or even 5 mil if it's really that extreme. So go up to a 4.5, then try it again and see if you're nearer my size. And if it's coming up too big, then go down a hook size, so go down to a 3.75 or a 3.5mm hook. And then whichever hook that you end up with as being your largest, go down 1 whole mil in size to this will be for using on your ribbon, so it creates a nice tight fit on your baby's finished jumper. Okay, so I think that's everything covered now, so we're just going to get started. So we're going to begin our jumper using our smaller crochet hook, the one that is 1mm smaller than the main size that you're going to use for the rest of the jumper. You're going to take your yarn and create a slip knot, and then we are going to make a chain of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we're going to be starting in the second chain from the hook, so not the first one, the second one, and we're going to work a single crochet, that's in US terms, that's double crochet in UK terms, into each chain all the way along. So we will end up with 6 single crochets in total. Then once you've finished creating your 6th single crochet, tighten up your starting chain there, chain 1 and turn your work. Now we're going to be working single crochets but into the back loop only of these stitches. So you've got your V there. Normally we work underneath both, but for this we're going to be working under the back loop only. So you've got your first stitch there, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So a single crochet into the back loop of that stitch there. and you're going to do that all the way along, so you'll end up with 6 in total. And then all we are going to do for the rest of the ribbing is repeat this row 2. So single crochet, it gets easier as you've got more fabric to hold on to, so the longer your ribbon is, the easier it does become. So that's our 6th into our back loop only. Again, make a chain of 1, turn your work, and then you're going to work a single crochet into each of the back loops. Now for the ribbing for this jumper, we are going to work a total of 33 rows of ribbing, okay? And I will just finish this one off and then I'll show you the easiest way. Obviously you can use stitch markers and row counters and what have you. The easiest way to count rows in ribbing I've found is if you turn your work, I mean that's the right side, turn your work to the wrong side, each little lump, so each bump here of ribbon, you'll have bumps and bumps and bumps of ribbon, so each bump is 2 rows, okay? So we've just done 3 rows, so this is 1 and 2, and this is the 3rd. So you've got like your hills and then you've kind of got your valleys. So each hill, each block of hill will be 2 rows long. So you need to keep going until you've got 33 stitches wide on your ribbing, which I have done here. Now you will see what I mean. So counting the rows, I'll just run through it again quickly. Go to the wrong side, so you've got your lump here, so it's 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, and your final one then to make 33. Now when you've completed your ribbing, you're going to switch to your larger crochet hook. So for me it's the 4 mil. And of course if you are doing your ribbing in a different colour to your main body, you need to change colour and attach your new yarn here up into the top right hand corner. And then we are going to make a chain of 2, and starting in this same corner space here, we're going to create 1 half double crochet. Now this is going to become row 1 of your main jumper, and then we are going to work 1 half double crochet into each side, into the side of each row all the way along. So what I tend to do is in order to get the right amount of stitches, I tend to avoid the peaks here and I tend to work into each trough along. So I've got 2 in there, I avoid the peak, work right next into it there, over to the left, and then again over to the left in there. I just find that it's easier to work into these than it is to, you'll find that it's quite hard to get your hook into the actual peaks there, so I tend to work into the troughs and just do 2 into each space. So you've got 1 there, and then you see you've got sort of a bit of a post there to work on the other side. So then continue along, so you're going to end up with a total of 33 half double crochets. I'll meet you back here once you've got to the end there. At the end of row 1, you want your work to be looking like this. So obviously we've made the ribbing with a smaller size hook, so it is going to bend slightly in, and it's going to be a tighter tension than the main body here. But you want this because you want this to tighten up around baby's waist, arms, and a little bit around their neck, so that's a good thing. Once you get to the end of row 1, you're going to chain 2 and turn your work, and then you are simply going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch from row 1 again, so you'll have 33 in total. Once you reach the end of row 2, you're going to do the same, make a chain of 2, turn your work, and work a 3rd row of half double crochets. Once you get to the end of that, I'm going to show you how to create the little bobble rows. On completing row 3, we should be back on the right side of our work. Now at the end of row 3, we are going to make a chain of 1 and turn. Then into the first stitch space here, we're going to work 1 single crochet, like so. And then into the second space here, we are going to be working a micro bobble stitch. Now, if you'd like a more comprehensive tutorial on this one, I do have a video on my channel. If you look in my playlist and look for stitch library, it's in there because this is a stitch that I've developed myself. So I'm just going to show you a couple of times here on how to make it on this one. So to create the micro bubble, you need to yarn over your hook, insert your hook into the stitch and pull up a loop as if you were creating a half double crochet or a double crochet. You're then going to yarn over and pull through one loop. So you still have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to then yarn over for a second time and pull through one loop for a second time. Now you're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So you're left with 2, and then yarn over and pull through those remaining 2 loops. Now each bubble is then going to be followed by a single crochet into the next stitch, and I'll show you how to make the bubble stitch again. So you yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2, and a single crochet into the next stitch. And I'll just show you one final time the micro bubble. So yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And then if you turn your work to the right side, you will see that you now have these little micro bubbles. Now these are really teeny tiny compared to ordinary bubbles. If you can see by my index finger there, they're very small and they're perfect for baby clothing. So that is basically the basics of your torso, and you're going to repeat this sequence of rows now. So you're going to repeat row 1 through to 4 all the way up until you have, let me show you this piece that I've already made. So you're going to create row 1, 2 and 3, so 3 rows of half double crochet, followed by a row of single crochet, micro bubble all the way along, finished off with a single crochet at the end to keep your line straight. Again, 3 rows of half double crochet, then a micro bubble row, and you're going to repeat that until you have 7 rows of micro bubbles. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows of micro bubbles, and then you're going to finish with your 3 rows of half double crochet. Okay, so you need to make 2 of these pieces, one for the front and one for the back. And once you've done that, I will meet you back here and I will show you how to create your armholes, your neck hole, and sew the 2 pieces together. Now that we have our 2 body pieces made, it's time to mark out our holes for our sleeves and our neck. So what we need to do is we need to have both our pieces with right sides facing out and wrong sides facing together, like so, and then line them up. And for each armhole, we are going to make each armhole 10 rows from the top. So you need to count down. So you've got your 3 there and your 4th is your bubble. So you've got 4, 8, 9, and there's your 10 there. So insert a stitch marker into the bottom of the 10th row on your front piece, and also do the same on your back piece, ensuring that you've lined up correctly. So we've got our bubbles there, and then that one needs to go into the 2nd row up from there. So that one there. And just double check if you need to. So 4, 8, 9 and 10. So that's into the bottom of the 10 rows on that side, and then do the same on the opposite side. So 4, 8, 9 and 10 into the bottom of the 10th there, like so. It doesn't have to be perfectly through several hoops, just needs to make sure that that stitch marker stays there and it keeps your pieces even. So those are your armholes. Then we are going to do the neck. So for the neck, we are going to count in 10 stitches from the edge. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then insert a stitch marker into the next stitch, so into the 11th. Okay. Then we are going to do the same on the opposite side. So count in 10 from the side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and insert a stitch marker into the 11th. And you should then have your stitch markers placed 13 stitches. So I think it's 11 between them, but they're 13 stitches in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, so we've got our 13 stitches there for our neck. You need to do again the same on the opposite side. So find your back and count 10 stitches in and insert a marker into your 11th on both sides. 3, 6, 9, 10, and that's number 11. And again on this side. 3, 6, 9, 10, and number 11 there. Okay, so now we've marked out our holes. Obviously, the space between these two stitch markers here, we are not going to sew together. We're going to leave that open because that's the opening for the neck. And also we are leaving the space between our stitch marker and the top corner of our pieces. We're leaving those open there for the armholes. So to begin sewing your pieces together, we're going to start from the bottom up. So find one of the bottom corners of your ribbing and attach some yarn with a sewing needle. It's entirely up to you how you fasten. I like to tie in a little knot just to secure. Try and pull it towards the inner side of your work. Now, with sewing crochet pieces together, obviously everybody has their own different techniques, and when it comes to, if any of you are traditional sewers as well with fabric, instinct tells you to sew, turn your work inside out and then sew the pieces together. However, I found with crochet, actually, it doesn't give a nice finish because of the thickness of the fabric. You tend to get this, you get a really distinguished line. So I personally, when I sew crochet together, I actually sew it right sides out. And also I tend to try whatever seam I'm sewing together. So rather than sewing like a sandwich now, I actually tend to try and flatten it so that my pieces are opposite each other, like so. And then I just whip stitch up through the outer loops. I mean, as I say, I don't know if this is the right way or the wrong way, but this is how I find for my personal sewing where it's best for me. And then I just whip stitch through the outer loops of every stitch up, making sure that your work stays aligned, because it's easy for crochet to misalign as you're sewing, and catching your stitches there. And of course it's up to you what yarn you use. I'm using a variated yarn, so of course my sewing thread isn't always going to match the colour up along the seam, so that's something you need to bear in mind if that's of how you want your work to be finished. So continue sewing using your preferred method all the way up along until you get to the just below the marked stitch space there, and I'll meet you back there in a second. Once you've sewn up both of your side pieces and you've got a solid torso, it's now time to assemble your shoulders. Just to quickly note that with sewing up your side pieces, if you leave your sewing tail there, don't worry about weaving it in, because we'll use that to attach our sleeve yarn to, and then we can just hide the tail in within the crochet of the sleeve. So it just minimises finishing. So to sew your shoulders, we're going to do the same as what we did with the sides. So flatten the piece down and have them opposite, and I'm just using the tails that are left over from finishing off our torso. So again, just whichever corner you want to work in from, and then just whip stitch up through the outer or inner loops, whichever you prefer, of your stitches. And then you're just going to stitch all the way along there until you meet your stitch markers, and then just stop just before you get to your stitch marker stitches there. So in that final stitch, you might want to work a couple of stitches there just to add strength, but stitch all the way along on both sides until you get to your stitch markers and fasten those off securely. Then we'll be moving on to creating our sleeves. Now that we've sewn our body pieces together, we're going to be starting work on our sleeve. So what we need to do is find your marked stitch space and remove your stitch marker and insert your hook and attach some yarn into that marked stitch there, so that we're at the very bottom of your armhole where it meets the body, and just attach some yarn and make a chain of 2. Then making sure that you're going right way, so clockwise around, the right side facing out, we're going to work a half double crochet starting in that same stitch space there, and then we're going to work a half double crochet into the side of each row all the way around the armhole, and just try and space them as evenly as possible. It is a bit tricky, you've just sort of got to eyeball it, but what we're looking for is we're looking for around 28 stitches in total. Just continue up and around, spacing them nice and evenly. And once you come to the shoulder join, nearly there, 1 second. Once you come to the shoulder join, just sort of try and get one as centrally as possible, and then work into the next stitch over on the back. Repeat that all the way around, and then once you're about 3/4 of the way around, it's worth going back and double checking how many stitches you've created, so then you can figure out the required spacing on your final bit. So I'm just going to work one more stitch, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to count how many I've made. So we've got our first one there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I want to make another 8 in these stitch spaces here, in the remaining space. So it's 21, 22. Also, you could obviously aim for your center line, 23, your join line, to have your 14 stitches up there, 14 stitches on one side, 14 stitches on the other side. 25, 26, and then you see I'm just spacing it out just that little bit more, 27 and 28 into that gap there. And then we'll finish that round with a slip stitch into the top of our first half double crochet there to close that gap up under the arm. And just go back, double check that you've got your 28 stitches. So now you've got your armhole created there, okay? Then once we've finished our slip stitch, we're going to make a chain of 2, and we're going to turn our work. So we're going anti-clockwise, we're working the wrong side of our work. Basically, we're mirroring what we've done along the body. Starting in the slip stitch space, so in that very first space there, it can be a little bit tight, so just be wary of that when you are slip stitching. Starting in that one and working 1 half double crochet in each stitch along until you get to the end. So you've got 28 half double crochets in total. Finish that round off with a slip stitch into the top of your first half double crochet. Then you are going to chain 2 and turn your work again. Then you're going to be making one more round of half double crochet. So you're going to have 3 rounds of half double crochet in total, alternating between right and wrong side. And then once you've finished your 3rd round of half double crochets, you will be on the right side of your work. And once you turn your work at the end of that 3rd row, you will be ready to make your micro bobo stitch rows, and I will meet you back there. So to go ahead, do your first round of half double crochets into the spaces, slip stitch, chain 2, turn, do another round of half double crochets, join with a slip stitch, chain 2 and turn, and a 3rd row of half double crochets, and then I'll meet you back here to explain the micro bobble stage. Once you've completed your 3 rounds of half double crochet, you're going to finish with a slip stitch and just make a chain of 1 and turn your work. Now we're going to be working the single crochet micro bubble rounds, but because we've now got an even number, we're going to start the row with a micro bubble stitch, so then we finish our row with a single crochet so that it keeps the shape of the final micro bubble of that round. So just repeat that all the way around. So it's a single crochet followed by it's a micro bubble stitch followed by a single crochet, and you're alternating that all around as you had done with the main body piece. And then at the end of that one, you're going to join with a slip stitch into the top of your first micro bubble and chain 2 and turn your work, and then you're going to repeat the sequence again. So you're going to be making the 3 rounds of half double crochet while alternating between working right side and wrong side. And you're going to do that for a total of 18 rounds. So you'll have 4 lots of micro bubbles, and then at the end you will have 2 rounds of half double crochet after your final micro bubble. So like this one here. So this sleeve's finished here. I've just got it ready for showing you how to do the ribbing. So you've got up to your bubble there, it's 4 rows, 8 rows, 12 rows, 16 rows, and then 2 rows of half double crochet. And then I will meet you back in a second on the next clip to show you how to do the ribbing. Upon completion of the sleeve, you are going to add a narrow row of ribbing just to finish it off and to close up the gap slightly. So on your final row of your half double crochets, finish off by joining with a slip stitch and then change your hook, switch back to the smaller hook, and then you are going to turn your work and chain 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Then starting in the second chain from the hook, as always, you're going to work a single crochet into each of those chains, so 3 in total. 1, 2 and the third one there. Then what we're going to do is find the next unworked stitch space of your sleeve, which is this one here, and you're going to slip stitch into there. Find the next unworked stitch and you're going to slip stitch into that one also. So it's a chain of 4, starting in the second chain from the hook, working a single crochet into each chain so that you've got 3 single crochets. You're then going to slip stitch into the next unworked stitch of your jumper and then into the next one also. You're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. And we're going to ignore those slip stitches that we've just made, and we're going to work directly back into our chain of 3. So just double check where your stitches are. So you've got 1 there, 2 and 3, and we're going to work single crochet back loop only into each of those as we do with the other ribbing. So 1, 2 and 3 single crochets back loop only. We're going to make a chain of 1 and turn our work again 3 single crochet back loop only into each of those chain spaces, 2 and 3, and then as we did before, I'll just go through it again for you so it's clear. We're going to slip stitch into the next unworked stitch of the jumper and then slip stitch into the one next to it again. So that's 1 and 2, then a chain of 1, turn your work, and then you're going to work those single crochet back loop only into each of those 3 single crochets there, and you're going to repeat that ribbing all the way around until you come back to yourself here, and I will meet you back here to show you what to do at the end. Okay, when you come to the end of your ribbing, you will have something that looks like this, and now obviously you've run out of stitch spaces now to slip stitch into for this final row. So what I like to do is just slip stitch into that same stitch space there that was worked, so there isn't any more unworked stitches, so slip stitch back into that one there, and then that's squared off that last row of ribbing like so. Now obviously we want to join our sleeve now, It's entirely up to you. You can pull up a long loop now and use a sewing needle and sew the gap closed, or you can do what I do, which is fold the sleeve back on itself like so, so it's inside out, sandwich it together, take your working yarn and then just slip stitch in under the opposite stitch of that sleeve and then back in under your top loops of each stitch like so, and pull that through there, again into the next one under those stitches like so, and then into that third and final one there. But also once you've done that, because if you were to just leave that slip stitch in that third and final one, you sort of have a bit of a gap there. It's not very even. So what I tend to do is try and wiggle your hook into the very top of these stitches here, into the very top corner, and then just slip stitch one more time up there just to even off that edge in there, so it just makes it that little bit straighter. And then just pull your yarn up and fasten off and weave in your ends like you normally would. And that there is your sleeve complete. Now I know with this pattern it looks a bit funny because you think, oh, it's very square, how on earth is that going to fit on a child? But actually what happens is when it's being worn is this bit here isn't actually where the arm stops. This bit actually comes down into the arm slightly like so, and it actually shapes nicely around the body instead. So I just thought I'd clarify that just in case anyone was freaking out like how square it actually is, but it does shape around the body once it's on. So now we've gone through how to do the sleeves. Obviously you do the same on the opposite side for the other one. And now we're going to start work on our neckline. Starting work on the neckline, we no longer need our stitch markers now, so you can remove those. They're just purely for sewing purposes. So you now have your neck opening, and basically we're going to crochet in a similar way to how we did our sleeve holes, our sleeves. So you're going to insert your hook using a 3mm hook because we're just working ribbing on this section here. So use your smallest hook and attach your yarn. And I'm going to make a chain of 4 as I did with the sleeves. I'm going to make it smaller. So a chain of 4, work back into the second chain from the hook, and you're going to work 3 single crochets. And now with the neck, we're going to work slightly differently because I want to do a couple of decreases in this section here where the neck and shoulders meet. It just helps rather than rather than having a box of neck ribbing coming up like that, which is what would happen if we just did a straight even round of ribbing stitches, we're going to create some decreases. So in order to do that, we're going to slip stitch into the next unworked stitch as always, but then when it comes to going into the next stitch, we're not just going to slip stitch into here, we're going to create a slip stitch decrease. So what I'm going to do is insert my hook under the front loop of the next unworked stitch and then the front loop of the following unworked stitch, yarn over, pull through those 2 loops and pull through the loop that was on your hook. So there we've effectively created a slip stitch decrease. You're then going to chain 1 and turn your work and continue working your ribbing as you would always, ignoring your slip stitches and working your 3 single crochets and obviously into the back loops only to create our ribbing effect. This bit is a bit fiddly, I need to come down a bit closer. 2 and 3, finish with a chain 1 and a turn. And am I going to make another decrease? No, I'm going to keep that as it is. So we've made our 1 slip stitch decrease, and now we're just going to work our ribbing as normal into our back loop only again, and then onto the next section. We're not making any more slip stitch decreases now, so find your next unworked stitch, which is if you find it hard to see, because obviously it's a slip stitch decrease, because your eye would tell you that that one is the next unworked stitch, when in actual fact, if you turn it up like that, you can see that the front loop of that stitch is being pulled. So that's where we've worked the decrease into. So you want to go into this next stitch here, slip stitch into there, then slip stitch into the next one to start your next round of ribbing. Now we're going to continue ribbing as always, like we usually do, up until we start approaching the next edge, the next point where our shoulder meets our neckline there. We're going to create another decrease row of ribbing. So I will meet you back here. We'll go along the back here, and then once we get to this point, a couple of stitches or so before we get to this point where the neck meets the shoulder, I'll guide you through this section again. So we've now worked along the back of our neck, and we're just coming up to where our shoulder meets the sleeves again. So I've completed that row of ribbing, so I'm just going to slip stitch into the next 2 unworked stitches, chain 1, and work my next row of ribbing. And then I'm actually going to make the decrease on the next work down, so on my next row of ribbing. So after this one, after these 3, so then we're doing it across as opposite, as parallel to the previous decrease as we can, so then the neck sits nice and even. So just work those final 3 single crochet back loop onlys. And we are going to slip stitch into the next unworked stitch, into the center stitch here. You might want to actually try and grab another loop. So if you've got a single loop like I have there, you might want to grab a lower loop like that, so you've got 2 on your hook and it's just a tighter space to slip stitch into, then otherwise you'd end up with a big gap. So we slip stitch into the next one, and then we're going to make a decrease in between these next 2 stitches here. So again, insert your hook under the front loop of the first stitch, under the front loop of the next stitch, yarn over, pull that through those 2 loops, and then pull it through the loop that's on your hook, chain 1 and turn, and that's your other slip stitch decrease created. And then you're just going to, as always, skip over your slip stitches and single crochet back loop only into those 3 previously made, and then as you did with the back, just follow it around to the front until you reach the end there. And then what we'll be doing is we'll be fastening off the same way as we have done with the sleeves. So you can either pull up your yarn and sew it together, or you can slip stitch it closed. So now you've joined your neckline, you can now see that we have much more of a teetering neckline as opposed to a square block, much more flattering and fitted once it's on. And now, after you've weaved in all of your ends and fastened everything off, that will be your baby jumper complete. So thank you guys for watching. If you do need this one in other sizes, then please feel free to check out the link in the description box below this video. It will have links to all of my pattern stores and all of my social media accounts as well. And if you haven't already, please do click the subscribe button, give this video a like and a comment, even if you're feeling generous, and that will help others see my content too and help me make more. Thank you again, guys, and until next time, I'll see you.